to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and enthogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nicole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.
It's Thursday, November 3rd. Today is One Health Day, World Jellyfish Day, National Housewives Day. Shout out to the housewives out there. And of course, it couldn't be National Housewives Day without it being National Sandwich Day too. Thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms, especially right here on YouTube. We're live every Monday through Friday on YouTube and audio only on Clubhouse. And if you are joining us via Clubhouse, you can participate in the show by raising your hand if you have a brief comment on the story most recently presented. Also, too, in one quick word of today, I want to make sure that we memorialize this show in memory of Rico Valderrama. Rico Valderrama recently passed. He was a very active cannabis activist in the space out of the DC area, better known on social media as Phone Homie. So we want to say rest in peace to Rico Valderrama, and our prayers and thoughts are with his family and friends. But nonetheless, we are going to keep it rolling today in the news. It is none other than the dope dad himself. That's right, Rico Lamitte. When he is babysitting kids, you can also find him finger painting, playing with shells, and of course, changing diapers. That's right. When he's not doing anything like that, you can find him at TEDx conventions doing the same damn thing, finger painting with grown-ass adults, where you can tell that he did this magical piece right behind us with the flames of fury. That's right. Oh, yeah. When he's not doing anything else like that, you can find him here with us at High at 9 News, Monday through Friday. It is none other than the dope dad himself, Rico Lamitte.
Oh, yeah. Appreciate the illustrious introduction there, Jason. We can talk about my art another time. But today, my headline's coming from Marijuana Moment by Kyle Yeager. Biden says his marijuana pardons have improved Black Americans' lives, but he overstates the real-life impact. Joe Biden, he's kind of like the white dudes with zero self-awareness, claiming they can't be racist because their best friend's Black, after being caught on camera dropping N-bombs with hard R's. Too harsh? I don't think so. Tuesday, in an effort to draw more Black community midterm election support for the Dems, President Biden's handlers thought it'd be a good idea for him to go on back on Black Talk Radio. And it seems like just yesterday, then candidate Joe Biden, locked in his basement, afraid of campaigning outside with the people out of fear he'd catch the COVID, zoomed into Breakfast Club to tell Charlemagne the God any of us that didn't vote for him wasn't Black. Now, I admit criticizing old Robinette for taking extra COVID precautions at the time is unfair. He is 80 years old, after all. And but the old white man's comments, nonetheless, should have been enough warning that he got a little too comfortable after 8 years kicking it with the Obamas. When Smiley asked what he's done nearly 2 years in office to improve lives of Black Americans, Biden proceeded to list last month's federal cannabis pardon first before a number of other things that could have been a positive impact, that could amount to positive impact on Black communities in the long term, but nothing immediate. Well, I hope I've improved the lives of African Americans like I said I would do. For example, too many African Americans were denied everything from Pell Grants, student loans, housing, etc., because they were arrested for possession of marijuana. Many too many. Whites as well. See, I personally blame Hillary Clinton for him not stopping right there, because she clearly never told him possession of hot sauce in one's bag does not provide a blanketed lifetime pass to the cookout. One must know when and how to apply said condiment to receive proper and approved entry. Also, access is never for life, as passwords are promptly updated quarterly. Biden then continued. So anybody who was ever arrested just for the possession of marijuana, their record is expunged. They don't have to list it anymore, and it's going to free up a lot of opportunities. Come on, man. You're doing too much here, Joe. Come on, stop. Yeager pointed out a presidential pardon represents formal forgiveness for the covered offense. It's not the same thing as expungement, where the crime is wiped from a person's record. I'm inclined not to use the same nice word that Yeager did as the headline overstatement here either. Biden's been a pro-law enforcement politician 50 years now, and one of the sponsors of the 94 crime bill. He knows the difference between expungement and a pardon. He did not provide the latter. This was a lie. Yeager also cited a 2016 CRS report on conflicting interpretations of the impact of a pardon, with general consensus being it may restore certain rights, but it does not clear a person's record in the same ways as expungement. The continued presence of a conviction on a person's record, notwithstanding a pardon, could still raise barriers with respect to such person's suitability. In contrast, an expungement of one's record generally appears to go a step beyond the effect of a pardon and removes the record of the conviction as well as the underlying guilt. End quote. President Biden wants to continue recognizing cannabis reform as a racial equity issue. Cool. But he also needs to take ownership of the fact he's only half step in the right direction toward a solution, and he should be called out for it to his face, not given another invite to our biggest platforms just to lie about what he did and the effect of what he's done. Biden's been repeatedly touting federal clemency as a changing the lives of thousands of people, but his teams explicitly stated he's unwilling to provide any further action for sales or trafficking convictions or take any more questions on the topic before midterms either. Hyperinflation and economic recessions hurt Black communities exponentially worse than others, and the Black unemployment rate is consistently twice that of the rest of America. Really. So if you really want to help our people and maintain the past 30 years of blind support of the Democratic Party from the majority of Black voters, offer solutions that immediately begin bridging the economic gap separating Black communities from the rest of America. Time is not on our side, and we need solutions. We should be holding all politicians, regardless of party, to account for refusing to address the economic crisis from a Black perspective. Ice Cube was right. This is Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street. Thank you for joining us for another episode of High at 9 News. I'd like to hear everybody else on this one.
Well, I will start out by saying I might give Joe the benefit of the doubt and say he's senile instead of a liar. Either way, he's one or the other. The man, no one calls him out on his shit. I mean, a couple days ago in Florida, he forgot how his son died and said he died in a rock. I mean, the man either doesn't know what he's talking about, and I love, Rico, that you're giving him the benefit of the doubt that he's been around for 20 years in pro-law enforcement, and that's why he got it wrong. He got it wrong because he doesn't know where the hell he is. And frankly, he doesn't know what he did, and he doesn't realize that he didn't do shit for the cannabis industry or for Black people.
I'd really like to know what is the percentage of the 6,500 people that actually did benefit from these pardons. What is the breakdown of in race of those 6,500 individuals?
23% were Black.
23% were Black.
Did a demo analysis of it.
Yeah, Kyle Yeager. He does.
So that's less than a quarter. Just yes. in mind. And so, and mind you, 6,500 people is not a lot of people when we're talking about the general public of the American population. So I would push back and say Biden hasn't done shit for Black people.
I wouldn't go on to say he hasn't done shit, but he hasn't done anything that's had an immediate effect to help us.
Okay.
Out.
All right.
What has he done? If you're saying he hasn't done anything for an immediate effect, what do you think he's done for Black people?
I think a lot of the things that he has done and that were actually listed in the article can have a long-term effect. Ketanji Brown, her being on the Supreme Court, that can have a lasting effect. That can have a long-term effect, especially with influence for young Black girls and young Black people looking to get into law. enforcement.
Rico, I'm gonna start protecting that other Achilles heel of you because you're just backpedaling all over the fucking place. This is
I feel like the idea that there's a black woman as our vice president is a huge thing for Black people, in the fact that they see that. Like, I know Kamala, like, being from California and having been in the cannabis industry for a very long time, like, I low-key fucking hate the bitch. But at the same time, like, the idea of looking and seeing the same thing for when President Barack Obama, like, the idea of having a Black president in our country was fucking huge. So, like, I don't want to discount the fact that Joe Biden has a vice president that is a Black woman, not just a Black person, a Black woman, which is literally the most disproportionately affected group of people pretty much in our country. You could add, if you add disabled to it, the most disproportionately affected group of people. A disabled Black woman, like, literally has the least amount of opportunities in this fucking country. So to see someone who is a Black woman in power, I see that as being something that
I think it's nice for optics, but when she's going to go down as one of the most ineffective and worst vice presidents in our history, that does nothing to elevate Black women.
You know what's funny?
Vice president never did good. She's been terrible.
Go ahead, Liz. Go ahead, Liz. You're on mute. You're muted.
I would just argue that, like, optics do matter, especially with the Black community, because we have so few examples of people in power, people doing good things or bad things in power, and that's why Black Panther is the biggest fucking Marvel movie ever.
And I think they could
over and over again, because
I was at Kamala Harris's acceptance speech when she accepted her win for district attorney of San Francisco, which was really the start of her political career. And I remember her little sister, who was part of the ACLU at the time, gave this speech, and basically it was saying, it is important that she is the first Black woman district attorney in California, and all of this, but it's even more important to make sure that she does a good job, so then that way people don't point later on and basically say, this is why we don't do that again.
Yes. That was my point, and hopefully you can hear me now, you guys. That is
we can hear you loud and well, Liz.
That's exactly my point. When we do things just for optics, that's all you're going to get. You're not going to get real results. She will go down as one of the worst leaders of our country's history who's done nothing. Being from Texas, I'm very sensitive to how Kamala has completely ignored our border issues. So, I think that it's just fodder for, racists fire. To say,
I don't know.
She couldn't do the job.
I don't know, because all the fucking entitled white dudes that they put in the position suck fucking just as bad, if not worse. So, like, I don't know.
I don't know if that's true, though. I think you got to look at the scoreboard.
The amount of awful human beings that have been running our country, that we've not stopped bringing in entitled white dudes that are, corrupting our country. We didn't stop doing that.
But you're painting them all with the same brush, Nicole, and that's the problem. That's why the argument falls apart. There are far more white dudes. There are far more white dudes in power because this is America, and white dudes are in power, and that's just that's a fact, and that's something we're trying to balance that out right now, I think, with the movement and progress. But the fact is, we have to put the right person in for the job.
Exactly.
Period. I love representation. I want more people of color in positions of leadership. It makes me uncomfortable when there are too many white people in control, and I am a white woman. But the fact is, we have to put the right person in, and Kamala has failed. And we're not even talking about Kamala. We're talking about
identity politics. Just doesn't work.
I'm gonna say this about Joe Biden. He has done a lot of things that will have a long-term effect. I'm not going to discount that at all. But right now, when we're dealing with hyperinflation, we are dealing with a recession that they refuse to call a recession. Black people get hurt the most. Black communities get hurt the most, and nothing is being done to rectify that fucking situation. And that's what needs to be addressed. And this is why I said Ice Cube was right. We need to stop fucking worrying about political parties and go with who is going to help us out, who's going to bridge that economic gap.
Yes.
He's done more for cannabis than anybody else has done. I mean, we can talk about how ineffective this little deal was that he did, but at least he didn't enact a 3 strikes and you're out rule. He didn't.
He's the author of the 3 strikes law, Dr. Mary. He's the author of that. He was the leading Democratic senator on the 3 strikes bill in the first place.
94 crime bill.
Yeah.
And it was and like I said, like what he did.
You cannot stick up for Biden on that one, Dr.
I mean,
Mary.
things are different now than they were then, and this is more than anybody has done. I mean, I'd like to know what anybody in the last three presidencies.
I'm gonna say Trump did way more than Biden did.
Wow, let's go
straight
ahead
up.
and let's go ahead and stop this conversation. Let's go ahead and stop this conversation before it goes any further. We are at time on this. Thank you so much, Rico, and thank you everybody for being entertaining and fun and educated on this conversation topic. Up next, we have Jason Beck, longest running retailer in the history of regulated cannabis. Also, obviously, a pretty big supporter in things that rhyme with stump and dump and hump. Also, what we would like to call our very own Kaiser Brose. What do you have for us today, Brose?
Oh, yeah. Good morning. Thank you so much, Nicole. Oh, man. Today, my story, I just have to tell you, it's written by prohibitionists, and it's written, it's pretty bad. I'm just the trigger warnings that even I think this is a bad story. Because a man ran out of Halloween candy and handed out possible marijuana gummies instead, the report says. A suburban Chicago man has been arrested after handing out gummy bears to kids on Halloween that may have been contaminated with cannabis after claiming that he ran out of candy, according to a police and local report. Gerald Fallon, 25, was identified as the person who distributed an unknown number of bags filled with gummy bears that smelled of marijuana in South Chicago Heights, Fox 32 Chicago reported. An alert parent and grandparent discovered the suspicious candy and turned the package over to police. The South Chicago Heights Police Department said the yellow gummy bears were packaged with wrappers with no branding or print in a clear shrink film over silver foil with a black back panel. In a quote, "I was walking down the street and someone commented that someone was handing out black packets of marijuana gummies. One dad who wished to remain anonymous told the situation, I checked my 4-year-old daughter's bag, and yes, I found 3 packets of gummies that smelled like marijuana." During an investigation, the report said that officers identified Phelan as the suspect believed to have handed out the potentially contaminated gummy bears. He said he ran out of candy, Chief Williams Joyce told the station, and says, so he had some little baggies and he put some of his gummies in there and started distributing them. The suspect was arrested and charged with 5 counts of child endangerment, police said, and police sent and recovered samples to a crime lab for testing to determine whether there was any contamination, but they haven't got the results back yet. While the department said it was not aware of any children ingesting the gummies, it asked parents to contact them with any information about the suspicious candy packages, and police advised parents to seek medical advice if any child consumed the gummy bears. And I'm going to tell you the best thing to do if a child consumes gummy bears is give them a glass of whole milk, because that will dilute the high immediately, and that's the same thing they're going to do at the hospital. But I'm going to digress, and I want to see what everyone else has to say, because I can't even believe that I'm covering a story like this. This guy is just an idiot. And this is Jason Beck reporting for High at 9 News.
This guy's picture.
His picture, right? His picture is like says stupid written all over it.
He's like exactly the guy that would do some shit like this.
Like, I'm just mind baffled. And it's like, and he's in Illinois, so I can't even like say it's definitely Delta 8. Like, there's a possibility that it was actually weed gummies.
I mean, it's a possibility because they're in black, not labeled packages in any state that they're actually weed gummies. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a regulated state or not. They're in unmarked bags. You know what I mean? So that right there, like if it was in a Delta 8 container, it'd be one thing, or something that had a label on it, but they're just little unmarked bags. And then my, thought and question is like, how many of these did he
packed them fat? Do you see how fat the bags were packed?
I'm like really confused about it. Like, the whole reality that anybody would want to do that. Like, I went candy shopping to get candy for the kids, and Target told me there was a candy shortage because I got there on Halloween and they were like literally out of fucking bagged candy. So I got fruit snacks, gave out fruit snacks like a fucking asshole. But I told everyone that diabetes was more scary than ghosts. But with that said, the idea that you would give out something so expensive comparatively,
right?
Like
that part, exactly.
The gummy bears were even expensive. Like, and I thought about it. You know what I mean? Like, or the fruit snacks. Fruit snacks are drastically more expensive than shitty candy. Like, I spent $50 on fruit snacks when I would have spent like $20 on candy, and I got like half as much shit. But I even was like, oh, am I going to do this? Like, who in their right fucking mind puts out, if that was that much gummy bears, that's like $20 that you could probably sell, especially in fucking Ohio.
Exactly.
Like you're just giving out 20s to kids. Like this is better. This is bigger than a fucking full chocolate bar.
Right.
I think the story here is really that it's Fox News reporting it and more just, fear tactics, scare tactics that they're trying to put out there.
Did he admit to it?
Yeah. I mean, I read the entire article verbatim, and it doesn't say that he admitted to it, but it does say in there that he started passing out the candies because he ran out of candy. That was a quote that the police said that he stated. So I have to believe that he is a dumbass and totally actually really did this. And I just want to apologize to all the parents out there on behalf of the cannabis industry that this person does not represent the cannabis industry whatsoever. This is the first story that I've ever heard of this in all the years that I've heard about candy being laced and given out as yada 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 by all the prohibitionists. That I'm saddened for this family, and I definitely hope that this guy gets charged. Because I know Chicago has a weak ass DA and they don't prosecute crime, but we'll see.
What the product was tested, right?
No, it said that it was sent out for testing, but the police department has not got back final results of whether or not it was contaminated.
That it might have just been gummy bears that this motherfucker had bulk of, and he happened to have a bunch of bags because he's a fucking pot dealer. And so he's like, let me just give some gummy bears to some kids so I'm not an asshole. We haven't even tested it yet.
That is all.
We read this article and we haven't even tested the fucking weed yet.
It's stated in the article.
Fox News, baby.
But the gummies smelled like weed. The gummies smelled like weed.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up. Come on.
Smells like
I hate it here.
Fox News.
I can't believe nobody stopped Jason from this story.
I love this story.
Jason is king of the stories that will help his
the clickbait.
Yeah.
The clickbait. Yeah, baby. That's right.
Social media following.
Yes, that's right. We keep it
Follow
interesting
Jason
for our
Beck
audience.
for all the spicy ass stories.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Lots
of spice.
Let's keep this.
I'm calling fake news.
You're calling fake news on it?
I'm calling fake news.
So what you're calling is fake is that they were just actually gummy bears.
I'm calling. Yeah, you didn't test the goddamn gummy bears, okay?
The guy might smell like pot. His house might smell like pot, but it might have been a bag of fucking Harbo gummy bears that he bagged up into his little fucking gram bag.
Yeah,
we don't know that.
They're expensive. I mean, it just goes back to the fact that they're expensive when you've seen this guy's picture.
I agree with you two on both of this, but when I look at the guy's picture, it leads me to believe that he probably did this. I'm profiling him as a dumbass.
He does fit the description.
I hope somebody laces your fucking.
Where's my grinder?
All right.
I don't even have enough time.
As a felon, the woman formerly known as Jail Google dedicated her life to paying forward the knowledge learned 30 days locked up in a cold Colorado jail cell. Because she never wants you to end up in the same place. She's now a Long Beach-based agriculture, efficiency, and compliance expert and a part-time student at LBCC, working on her doctorate in dirtbag dynamics. Up next, the self-described general data bitch herself, Nicole West. What you got for us on this spicy Thursday morning?
Good morning. Yeah, we are being very spicy. It is definitely pumpkin spice season up in this bitch. Today, my story is coming. I'm really excited to have Dr. Mary on the stage today because my story is a medical headline, and it's in regards to what drugs you shouldn't mix with cannabis. And I'm regularly trying to explain this to people. Like, I love this plant. I love this plant more than most people could even imagine. But we have to be cautious and conscious of there are counteractions, there are reactions, and there are people that are actually having bad reactions with nothing in their system but just cannabis. So we have to do and really be respectful of this process and not as much as we can tell people that this is, the solution. Now, with that said, I'm going to list off a bunch of a bunch of different pharmaceuticals, and a lot of them, people use cannabis in lieu of these products. But it's very interesting to see that, we, according to physicians and research, that we shouldn't be consuming cannabis with these specific pharmaceuticals. So it's important that, many would argue that cannabis is considered a relatively safe drug. And as time passes, medical professionals are finding more and more uses for the plant as a medicine, from helping those with multiple sclerosis to a drug-derived form of cannabis and approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to treat epilepsy. Marijuana is seemingly finding its footing and rooting itself in the medical community regularly. But still, just like with almost every other substance consumed, there's certain medicines that just don't mix well with cannabis. What's more, while marijuana can often have the desired effects, these effects can somewhat be dire for those with certain medical conditions. So one of the first ones to discuss is blood thinners. Blood thinners, cannabis and blood thinners are another potentially dangerous combination. Marijuana can cause blood thinners to work excessively well, which can have dangerous consequences. Marijuana can increase the levels of blood thinner warfarin in the body, which can lead to excessive bleeding. Super scary. Anxiety or depression medication. Another group of drugs that can have a negative effect and even dangerous consequences when mixed with cannabis are medications that are meant to treat anxiety and depression. More specifically, selective serotonin uptake inhibitors, or SSRIs, such as Cipralex or Prozac, and other benzodiazepines such as Xanax or Valium can both have very adverse effects when mixed with marijuana. Very concerning when we consider the fact that a lot of people are using cannabis to treat their anxiety or depression, and a lot of people are utilizing also pharmaceutical medications. So when we are having this conversation with our doctors, I know we're getting more and more open, but it is so important for you to be transparent with your physician when they are prescribing you medications, because things like this do come into play. I don't know what this tamoxifen, tamoxifen. While medical marijuana is often prescribed to cancer patients undergoing treatment, one medication in particular should never be taken with cannabis. Tamoxifen, which is one drug used to combat breast cancer, may have benefits negated when combined with marijuana. If pot transfers with the processing of tamoxifen, it could cause the breast cancer patient to receive little to no benefit from the drug. Philip Lazarus, a professor of pharmaceutical science in Washington State University, said. This should be a sobering reminder to always consult one's physician. So we have continued challenges. Oh, there was one more I want to make sure. Opioids and sedatives. Opioids and sedatives come with their own risks, even when they're not combined with other substances. Obviously, one of the biggest things killing people in America today. When they are combined with cannabis, though, their effects can be heightened and amplified, which can be dangerous for those who are combining these substances. Marijuana is the biggest known impact is with opioids for pain, sleep medication, muscle relaxation, and alcohol, because all affect the central nervous system, according to Salem Health, which also mentions that when cannabis is used with these sedatives and hypnotics, it can have an addictive effect as well. So apparently they're saying that cannabis specifically can increase your ability to become dependent on these already very addictive drugs, which is pretty concerning. So I just want to make sure that everybody has a little bit of information. If you are taking any of those medications, obviously do some research on this. I am not a doctor, and I hope that Dr. Mary has some insight on this, but I think it's super interesting and also very important for everybody in the industry that's continuously spreading the words of how much cannabis can help, that we be conscious of things that it could also be negative and actually stop your healing if you are on a track with a certain specific medication. And that is the path that you're going through. So I'm super excited to hear what Dr. Mary or anybody else on the stage has to say. And I'm Nicole West, getting high at 9 with y'all.
Great reporting coverage, Nicole. It's really important to think about the other medicines that you're on and talk to your doctor. But, a lot of these drug interactions are identified as drug interactions because both of the drugs are broken down in the same part of the liver with the same enzymes. But are they, in fact, leading to changes in levels of other drugs that are actually relevant? In most cases, probably not. Maybe with some blood thinners and maybe with some chemotherapies. But, as long as you're careful with adding new medications, you can, it's not like an absolute contraindication. I talk to patients about like the concept of being on a highway and heading into a major city, and there's a lot of traffic coming from a lot of different cities and merging on both the right and the left, but everything is flowing. It's not like everything is backed up and there's a huge traffic jam. It's just all good traffic flow, and that's generally what's happening in the liver. If you add cannabis, you've got other medicines that are breaking down, but everything is still in a really functional flow. Everything is still getting broken down in most cases. So
the
don't
cancer medication was terrifying.
Don't get too freaked out if you're on one of these meds.
The cancer medication one was scary. And I do know, like we talk about it all the time. People utilize cannabis to get off of these medications. And so like, that's to me, when I look at most of these medications, I'm like, don't take these fucking things if you can help it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Again, I'm not a doctor, so like I'm not telling people to stop taking their pills if the doctor told them to, but like picking one or the other, every single one of these, cannabis is used to treat. And so and my heart of hearts, and like I would say, the way I would feel about it is like, hey, if I can take cannabis instead of this, I would like to. But also when I think about it, when you're taking them side by side, when we talk about science, right, when we're taking them together, it's very hard to figure out what's actually changing or what's actually helping. And so when you're doing and adding medications, it's helpful to isolate things, right? And see like, did this medication help, rather than throwing five things at it.
Yeah, I agree with I think the key takeaway from the article is like, we don't have enough information.
Yep.
And the science really hasn't caught up, and we haven't done enough tests with everything. But I do have to say that like nothing else would help. Rehab wouldn't help. Like nothing else would help me break my opioid addiction. Cannabis was the only thing that did help. Period. Yeah. And I was taking them simultaneously. I was taking them to wean myself off of it. And it's the only thing that did help.
Yeah, so. I mean, you know, a lot of these conditions, severe depression, even psychosis, that we used to say you shouldn't use cannabis, it's terrible. Now we're treating, you know, reefer madness with reefer. Yeah. But there's whole so figure that out. Isn't that interesting?
Treat the madness.
But in between there were a lot of drug companies that made a lot of money because we couldn't use any reefer to treat, you know, psychosis.
The one that did stand out to me out of all of them, like a good, for instance, this is, you know, a fun fact, St. John's wort is just an herb. It's for, you know, mental, it's a supposed to be like positive stimulation in your brain, right? It's a nutraceutical. If you take St. John's wort and birth control, it keeps the birth control from being effective if you're taking oral birth control. And that's like one of the like super simple, it's herb, it's no big deal. So that interaction made me conscious of the fact that like, oh shit, that when we're talking about this cancer drug, right? This specific cancer drug, they're saying that if you take cannabis with this cancer drug, that it actually keeps it from processing into your body correctly. That was the only one that I was like, oh wow, that's scary.
Do we know that this is true and it does this for real, and this isn't just the pharmaceutical company pushing back on cannabis?
All we know about pharmaceuticals are pharmaceutical researches, but this is something that's been being talked about for a while, is specific chemotherapies and cancer drugs having not actually adhering to your body the way they're supposed to with cannabis.
But then how many times do you hear about somebody who's, you know, not doing well with their cancer and they add cannabis and then it dissolves? I mean, my cousin has a lung cancer that was supposed to have killed him 5 years ago. He's high as a kite all the time, but he's alive.
Yeah, no, but and I feel like the option of taking cannabis instead of these other drugs is what we, you know what I mean? Like that's, to me, when I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, so we pick one, right? Like I'm gonna start with cannabis, and if that doesn't work, then I'll go to this crazy, scary, you know, other, you know, option that's going to probably kill all my insides and all my good flora.
The average seizure patient adds cannabis as their 13th try. Like after they've tried 13 medicines, they put cannabis on. So like
you said seizure patients, Dr. Mary?
That way.
I believe that.
You said seizure patients?
Seizure patients, yeah.
Yep. I had a grand mal seizure on one day, when this is before like I ever had a store or anything. And this was like back when like other delivery systems weren't widely available, like edibles and all that other shit. It was just, you just smoked weed. That's what it was. And I couldn't smoke one day. I was too sick. It actually hurt my throat too much to even smoke. And I went to sleep, and I woke up the next morning tied down on a hospital bed with a catheter in my dick, ET dots all over my chest, and a big ass tube going all the way down my throat. And I was tied down to the hospital bed rail. And the first thing, the doctor came in and said that I had a grand mal seizure and that my license had been suspended and that I would never drive again because I was on dope, because I had weed in my system. To which I told him that I wasn't on dope, that dope was white and I smoked weed and that was green. He did not believe me in that statement, but it was a very, very tragic thing, like having the doctor come in, because I felt like he was a judge and I was homeless at the time and lived in my car. So I was like, oh so shit, now you just sentenced me to like life in prison now, because I know as soon as I get out of this hospital and get pulled over, I don't even have a license. I'm automatically on search and seizure.
Yeah. Damn. Well, thank you all for entertaining that story, and Dr. Mary for all the insight, and everybody for chiming in the chat on this. This is definitely a conversation we want to keep having, but it's also important for us to know what we're up against as far as what medical research is out there, and also one of the main reasons why we need more medical research, because the research that we do have available is pointing towards these as facts. And for those of us who have our anecdotal information that we know in our heart of hearts, we need to get that into science and get that onto paper as well. But with that said, we're going to go ahead and hop to a commercial. At True Classic OG, we live by one motto: stay true. We stay true to our legacy cut of True OG that's always fresh, piney, gassy, and delicious. We represent the spirit, hustle, and diversity of our great city of Angels. And we stay true to the spirit of this plant, doing everything in-house to ensure that you get the highest quality and consistency with every batch. And that's what's made us LA's favorite OG. True Classic OG. Stay true, Los Angeles. The thoughts and opinions Jill Shade thrown on the High at Night News of those individual speakers, not those of any other speaker or its followers. The statements made do not constitute legal or accounting advice, and our speakers make no representation regarding the legal status of any country, area, territory, or authority. The views expressed in this room do not establish fiduciary relationships. Our sponsors do not imply, constitute the endorsement by us, expression, any opinion whatsoever of any speaker on stage. If you're an easily offended person, this show is probably not for you. Also, maybe it's time to consume some more cannabis.
Flying into LAX and you want to taste some of the best weed in the world? Then stop by LAXCC, the closest dispensary to LAX. Located at 8332 Lincoln Boulevard and open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Always make LAXCC your first stop when you touch down in LA and score like a winner. And don't forget to tell them I sent you and mention you'd like to get High 9 for 10% off your full order.
She's well known in DC circles for cooking up excellence in the kitchen. But don't get it twisted. The spicy, red-headed conservative's never afraid to spar verbally with pot-loving libs across the aisle. She also has a highly questionable love for safe banking minus, but she has evolved into the side of plus. Coming to the stage next is the founder of Panoptic Strategies and our very own Washington insider, Gretchen Gailey. What you got for us today, Gretchen? Spicy latte Thursday morning.
Good afternoon. Well, mine is not as spicy as we might hope for, because it's, of course, about Joe Biden, who's asleep at the wheel. My headline is coming from Roll Call. Biden ponders marijuana moves as states forge ahead. And this article is rather long, so I'm going to jump around a bit. And I would suggest people check it out if they want a little more. 5 states will vote next week on whether to join the 21 states and territories that have legalized recreational marijuana for adults, but the federal government is still stuck on whether to remove the plan from Schedule 1 of the Federal Drug Code, a category reserved for highly addictive substances with no medical benefit. The Biden administration's October 6th announcement that it would revisit the classification comes after previous years-long reviews of marijuana's categorization fell flat, and experts are split on whether things might be different this time. If history is to serve as any precedent, I wouldn't count on this review being wrapped up at a time where there is still a Biden administration, said Paul Armentano, Deputy Director of NORML. But Rosalie Pacula, a health policy professor at the University of Southern California, believes cannabis will ultimately be rescheduled, pointing to a 2020 change made by the United Nations that loosened control at the international level that the U.S. supported. And so I think that reconsideration of our own scheduling here in the U.S. is just a natural extension of how we voted in the world meeting. Let's see here. Now, so to get into how this is actually going to work, President Joe Biden's call for a review triggers a joint process between the Department of Health and Human Services and the DEA. The FDA first conducts an 8-factor analysis, which NIDA reviews and decides whether or not to concur. HHS then sends the recommendations to the DEA, which makes the final decision. HHS and the DEA most recently recommended and ruled against rescheduling in 2016. That review took more than 4 years. This time, however, the petition comes from Biden himself. The directive came just a month before a high-stakes midterm election where the Democrats' razor-thin majority in Congress is likely to splinter. The move aligns with widespread polling showing that 2/3 of Americans, including at least half of Republicans, support fully legalizing marijuana. Despite that, a Brookings Institution report found that 81% of congressional candidates were silent on the issue. The legalization movement also lacks support from the medical community, including the American Medical Association and the American Society of Addiction Medicine. Both groups instead support rescheduling cannabis to Schedule II to open it up to more research. But demoting marijuana to Schedule II would do little to close the gap with states. Any scheduled drug below Schedule I requires FDA oversight, which theoretically means that cannabis products would have to be FDA approved. Individuals would also need a prescription from a doctor. The story goes on to talk about the other states that are going to push for their legalization efforts, but I found it interesting looking at the precedent and how long this has taken before. Word I have heard on the Hill is that the schedule that they are greatly considering would be Schedule III. So that's what I'm hearing around town. I'd love to hear what people think. I totally agree with these folks as well that this is not getting done anytime soon. This is Gretchen for High at 9 News.
That's the same thing I told you, Gretchen, back on October 7th, was that President Biden was looking at Schedule III.
I think anytime the headline of this article, Biden ponders, I just, what comes to mind is that meme of Macho Man just like looking into the ocean,
Yes.
Like Joe Biden ponder marijuana legalization. Should I? What was I thinking?
Well, he wants to give it over to the pharmaceutical companies because that's what happened with any form of rescheduling. It clearly stated in the article every product would have to go through an FDA clearance, and therefore every single product across all 50 states would be deemed illicit product under the Food, Drugs, and Cosmetic Act. Not to mention the FDA regulates by the molecule, not by the substance or the product, and therefore they already have drug preclusion on THC for Marinol and CBD for Epidiolex. So guess what, cannabis industry, we're all fucked.
Tell the FDA to stay the fuck out of my rolling papers.
Yeah.
Before we jump into this, this is an interesting point I was talking with someone about just recently. It's like, do we really care if they reschedule? I mean, shit, we've been doing it illegal.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
We
100% do.
Let me say what I'm going to say first before you try and come up with some fake opinion.
I already have it.
All right. All I'm saying is this industry has not cared about the drug being completely illicit for a number of years. So why all of a sudden, if it goes to Schedule III, are we going to be like, oh, we're all going to shut down and be compliant with the FDA? Why do you think that's actually going to happen?
Okay, so I'm going to break it down to you like this, okay? Under Schedule I, the federal government agency that held government control over us was the DEA. Would you agree to that?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. So now, because of the Rohrabacher-Farr, now McClintock, the federal spending bill, the reality of it is that now the DEA has been sidelined, so they haven't stopped any growth of cannabis at all whatsoever. Okay, now we're talking about bringing in a new agency because any rescheduling will give them full governance over us. So now we're going to have a new federal agency governing over us without any. This is just all going to be fucked. They're going to come in and start closing people. They're going to start closing people. They're going to be sending out letters. Everyone's going to get cease and desist letters, and it's going to be a big fucked up scenario for everybody in the cannabis space.
Right, but my point is, why would they listen?
We deschedule.
What do you mean? Why would they listen? Because they're gonna file them to your businesses.
The only thing we can do is fight for descheduling.
Exactly. They're gonna file them to your businesses. You're gonna be financially ruined if this happens.
We need to do this.
Well, the states are going to continue to do what they want, is what is being suggested.
The states are going to allow people to keep on doing, but guess what? When your bank account starts getting money all just taken out of it because the federal government...
It already is happening, Jason. What difference
not like
is it?
This. It's not happening like it would happen with this. I do know this. I do know this. I lived through getting raided numerous times. I know exactly what time this is and what's going to happen.
So have I, but none of that's been with the FDA. But regardless, we're at time on this story. We got to hop to our next correspondent.
Well, nonetheless, he's a blunt-blowing Fresno-based man of the people representing the black conservative voice whose existence Joe Biden would love to silence for even acknowledging it exists. Here to change the narrative is none other than the governor himself, Nicholas Wildstar.
Appreciate the intro, JB. And what's up, everybody? Voters in 5 states, including 4 that are among the most conservative in the country are deciding on whether to legalize recreational marijuana this election. If passed in each state, Arkansas, Maryland, Missouri, North Dakota, and South Dakota would join 19 other states in the District of Columbia, where cannabis has already been legalized for personal use. All except Maryland backed Donald Trump in the 2020 presidential election, underscoring that the legalization effort increasingly spans the political spectrum and is gaining support in some of the most overwhelmingly Republican parts of the nation. A recent poll from Monmouth University shows 68% of the American public supports legalizing the possession of small amounts of marijuana for personal use. The support crosses gender, age, income, and education differences, polling shows. In addition to the 19 states that have legalized personal use, recreational use, 37 states now allow pot for medical purposes. The more people learn about cannabis and cannabis policy, the more we see them support making cannabis legal and regulating it and treating it like alcohol, says Mason Tivert, a partner at the marijuana policy and public affairs firm VS Strategies. This is an issue that is broadly supported by Americans of all political stripes, conservatives and progressives, he says. Legalization initiatives like Arkansas's issue number 4 and those in other majority Republican states look too close to call. Residents of North Dakota will have a chance to pass Measure 2, which is based on legalization that passed in North Dakota's House of Representatives, but failed in the state Senate last year. If approved, the state would follow the template set up in other states by establishing a regulatory system to oversee a limited number of retail dispensaries for adults 21 and over to purchase marijuana, as well as licensed cultivators to produce products around the state. In violation of the Controlled Substances Act, the state would likely apply a 5% statewide sales tax and local 3% tax. The measure also would allow adults to cultivate up to 3 plants in a residence. South Dakota's initiative, Measure 27, marks the latest effort to legalize recreational marijuana use in the state. Voters approved it in 2020, only to have it thrown out by the state Supreme Court. It's unclear if President Joe Biden's recent announcement that he is pardoning thousands of people federally charged for simple marijuana possession will have any impact on these 5 state-level measures. Biden also called for his administration to initiate the administrative process to review expeditiously how marijuana is scheduled under federal law. Under federal law, marijuana is currently on par with heroin, LSD, and other hard drugs. We classify marijuana at the same level as heroin and more serious than fentanyl. It makes no sense, Biden said in a tweet announcing the review and pardons. Tivert thinks the White House moves will help the state measures. When the most powerful political leader in the world says something, it goes a long way, he says. The president's comments really showed that the country is moving toward an end to cannabis prohibition. And if these states want to keep up with the rest of the country, they need to pass these measures, Tivert says. Polling on the issue in the 5 states, when it's done, shows that the measures are close. But some past surveys on the issue have proved unreliable, wildly inaccurate, and contradictory. This year is no exception. For example, recent polls in Missouri are all over the place. 2 show it close, and 1 says Amendment 3, as it's called, will roll its way to a double-digit victory. Whether these initiatives pass or not, this is really moving the ball forward, says Tivert. He says history shows the more people hear details about legalization, the more they tend to support it. Reporting for the High at 9 News Hour, this is Nick Wildstar, a.k.a. the governor, telling all y'all asses to go vote on Tuesday. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, governor.
That's right. Go vote on Tuesday or vote early.
I voted.
Yes, I already voted.
So good.
I've already helped a couple people vote too by helping them fill out their ballots. And so if anyone needs help, I'm more than happy to help them vote the right way.
Nice.
All right. Well, I think that's thank you so much for that headline and that story, Nick. And yes, everyone, please make sure that you use your right as an American to vote, because it is really one of the only things that we have that can change some things. So up next, we have Liz Rogan. Liz is, Liz Grow. I have the wrong Liz pulled up. Liz Grow is a cannabis storyteller and advocate from the Lone Star State. She's the co-founder of Grow House Media, and you can find her here weekly, as well as on her podcast, Feminized, where she interviews the dopest women in cannabis, found on YouTube and everywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find her. Liz, I'm so sorry about the last name slip, but what do you have today?
Babe, oh, I love it. I mean, to be, mistaken for Liz Rogan, that's, kind of a dope thing. So, but you guys, I have some news, okay? I don't know if you've heard, but marijuana is a more valuable crop than potatoes or rice. I'm talking about this report that just came out in the Marijuana Moment by our favorite, Kyle Yeager. And Leafly's 2022 Cannabis Harvest Report came out. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about this, but I really, really want to pick your brains about how you think our farmers can get respect. How you think they can get respect from the government. I just want to hear your thoughts on all that. So I'm just going to give you some beautiful numbers from this report. So the wholesale value of marijuana across 15 adult use states has reached $5 billion, making it the 6th most valuable cash crop in the country, above potatoes and rice. And that's not even accounting for the medical cannabis market and the hemp market. Okay, so Leafly analyzed licensing records for legal cannabis states, sales and tax reports, commercial pricing data, field measurements, U.S. Department of Agriculture crop values, and expert input to develop this report. So it's a great report. I highly recommend you check it out, because I can't read it all at high at 9. Okay, you have to have something to do when you go to the bathroom after high at 9. So read this report. But the top level takeaway is that the marijuana industry is a significant component of the agriculture industry, even if it's only legal and regulated by certain states at this point. There are almost 13,000 American farms growing marijuana for adult use in 15 covered states. It's pretty telling article, but I think one comment I want to pull from the article and highlight is from the report author, this guy named David Downs. He says that what he found is that there's a systemic discrimination at the local, state, and federal level. Adult use cannabis is a top cash crop in states where it's legal, but that song goes unsung. So one last little factoid I'm going to pull out before we can start talking is that these researchers found that farmers grew 24% more metric tons of adult use marijuana in 2021 compared to the previous year, which was COVID, okay? And overall, the sector cultivated 2,834 metric tons of cannabis, which would fill nearly 15,000 dump trucks lined up end to end for 45 miles. Okay, guys, I'm Liz Grow. I'm reporting for High at 9 News. I want to hear your thoughts. Even though we have this amazing cash crop, we still don't get the respect, okay, that we deserve. We still don't have access to traditional banking, safe banking. We've got own growing criminalization, overregulation, high taxes, no disaster relief, expensive insurance rates and application fees. What the fuck? How do we get some respect? This is Liz Grow reporting for High at 9 News.
Was that saying that it was a more valuable crop worldwide than potatoes and rice, or just in America?
Just in America.
So
if it's in America, wouldn't that mean the world?
The wholesale value of marijuana across is more valuable cash crop in the country.
Why wouldn't that mean the world? Why wouldn't that mean the world?
Because we're in the way of production of rice. We're like 15 on the list, like every other country. In the way of rice production, we're like behind India, China. A majority, there's parts of Europe that grow more rice than us.
Okay.
We only have 3 major rice locations in the United States: Arkansas, Mississippi, and there is some in Sacramento. Majority of the Sacramento rice farms are not being maintained as much as they used to be. So there's really only 2 states, Arkansas and Mississippi, that are actively growing rice in the United States. And as far as potatoes, potatoes are concerned, we're number 7 in the world as far as production is concerned, and we actually import about 30% of our potato intake in this country. So like we're importing rice.
So you're saying it's not that big of a deal. It seems like it's a big deal, but we got clickbaited, is what you're saying.
Yeah, we've been throttling back our actual production of a few of the major crops like that because of how cheap it is to grow in other places, and how like India is growing. I don't even remember what it was. China grows like 300 million.
But we're just talking about this country, though. We're just talking about this country, is what I'm saying. You know what? I hear what you're saying, and you know, like, definitely clickbaiting. Clickbaiting is
exported.
Real.
And we're importing and exporting these agricultural items. We can't do that for weed. So obviously it's going to be a bigger cash crop because we can only grow it here and we can only sell it here versus being able to import and export products. That's all I'm saying. And we're importing a lot of shit because it's cheaper from other countries because of labor.
Right. Okay. So what do you think then?
Capitalism.
Do you think it's not that big of a deal? I mean, where do you think... I
think it's a commodity. I think it's a commodity. And at a certain point, we have to really understand that it is a commodity and that we're going to have a commodity market on this. And at the end of the day, we're going to have some high-end products that are going to exist still. They're going to be commodity, like ancillary items. But this is a fucking, have you guys seen that video of the guy driving the fucking dump truck around the room full of weed all over the ground? Like, that's where we're at right now. Like, it's being produced at such volumes that, like, yeah,
we're doing it. We're doing it.
We have to be moving because we're running out of time, and I want to make sure Dr. Mary has enough time for her story too.
Yes.
All right, so she is a New York City-based 25-year board-certified medical doctor with Michigander roots. She's also a widely respected expert in CBD and here to serve us our daily dose of truth. Dr. Mary Clifton, what you got for us today?
I've got a great article for us today, and I was just looking at all your beautiful faces and thinking about how much fun it's going to be to see you in Vegas in a couple of weeks. Because we'll all be out there partying at MJ Biz. So fun. My article is from the Fresh Toast. It's marijuana can help treat symptoms of irritable bowel disease. Find study. This has been mistitled because the study actually was looking at inflammatory bowel disease. Irritable bowel disease is something that's very common that a lot of people have, loose stools or constipation and, some inconsistency with bowel movements. Inflammatory bowel disease is Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, like bloody stools, painful abdomens, surgeries, hospitalizations. So inflammatory bowel disease is a totally different animal. So outside of the mistitling of this article, it's a good study. It's a new study looking at the effects of marijuana on inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, and how the drug could lessen the symptoms with minimal side effects. They asked people to join the study who were self-reporting on inflammatory bowel disease, but that's not a diagnosis. That's a self-reporting is fine because I'm sure they saw somebody and were diagnosed. They mostly preferred using vaped cannabis, mainly with high amounts of THC, which speaks, Jason, to your point of how smoking may be the best way to deliver because it's such an immediate return on investment for controlling symptoms. The study concluded that medical cannabis users decreased their inflammatory bowel disease symptoms. It resulted in the course of 12 months to 5% fewer emergency room visits. And they also reported that it had a positive impact on their lives, lessening their everyday symptoms. 75% reported the unfortunate side effect of euphoria after using marijuana, and only a small minority reported negative effects like drowsiness, dry mouth, anxiety, depression, or paranoia, around about 3 or 4% for all of those things. So a very well tolerated and effective way to help control very, very serious bowel conditions that unfortunately are not that uncommon. And I'm Dr. Mary Clifton, reporting for High at 9 News.
Thank you for saying that, Dr. Mary. I did have a lot of issues back in the day with, bowel issues, and smoking more weed has helped me out, in addition to quitting lactose altogether.
Yeah, there's so much lactose intolerance, and especially, really anybody over the age of 10 or 11 should be, considered lactose intolerance before proven otherwise. But I tell parents to stop the milk on their kids when they're 2.5. There's just no reason for it.
Right, the milk lobby, and isn't like majority of, was it like full milk is
whole milk?
like, isn't it mostly cow pus?
Yeah, milk is pretty gross. It does have a regulated amount of cow pus in it, and because the udders get infected, from the excessive. So if it gets too high though, and you can't make liquid milk out of it, you can divert that milk into the cheese industry.
So the conversation,
Dr. Mary, I need you to hold me at MJ Biz next week, okay?
The conversation about milk is real, and
I'm a nut milk person, and I've given that to my child for years and years and years, and people thought that I was crazy in Texas. But drink your pus.
I was just saying the human body is we're only born with so much lactic enzyme in our body. So our body can only break down lactic acids for so long. And so everyone, when they get old, pretty much is like, I can't do the dairy. And it's because you ran out of the enzyme that actually allows for it to break down in your body.
They don't have a booster shot for that?
That's why people will take the Lactaid pills and stuff, or that sort of thing.
And worse than that, the milk has a lot of growth hormones in it, because it's designed right to make a baby cow a very big cow very quickly. And when you're in my body or in any of our bodies, we're not really growing quickly anymore. The only thing that's growing quickly is cancer.
But we have to be conscious. Almond milk is actually destroying our fucking environment worse than the cows are. So if anybody's trying to use almond milk as an alternative, and you think that you're an environmentalist, also check the data on that, because almonds are fucking terrible for the environment.
And oat milk is better too.
I love walnut milk.
Oat milk is best for that as well.
The oat milk they say is high in fat. And I recently tried macadamia nut milk.
Macadamia milk
it was
really
fucking amazing.
Yes.
Okay.
It's my new jam.
I've had that too.
For a chick who likes to bake up tasty treats, I love my whole milk. I love butter. I love dairy. The more the better. I got plenty of enzymes to go around. I'm good.
Oh,
I can't wait until Gretchen Golden tells us the opposite. I'm gonna go
I eat a lot of queso.
Actually, America's dairy farmers are one of clients of Gretchen's and Panoptic Strategy, so this has been a disclaimer.
Dairy farmers across America.
I will eat those milk-infused treats as long as you keep that bathroom door open.
Gretchen.
Oh man, that's right.
Yes, all right, y'all, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you all out there for tuning in to yet another episode of High at 9 News. You can always catch us weekdays 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our audience and supporters tuning in daily to our live reading and reactions to the headlines, the chaos, also known as the developing cannabis industry. A very special thanks goes out to the haters. We know who you are and love the fact that you are offering the rent-free relief to live in your heads continuously, making you mad every fucking day. We hear you. Thank you to the sponsors, True Classic, LAXCC, and our vetted industry correspondents tuning in from all over the global community, bringing us much needed variety of perspective and your respected opinions to the industry-related stories that we cover. Thank you to our production team at 3 is 4 Media, making us look and sound fantastic on the daily, even after Mojave fucked up my shit and you see me glitching all over the damn place. Also to Jaja Simone over in the clubhouse, holding it down for us with all the people that are listening. And finally, thank you to the Plant Cannabis Sativa. We love you and owe you so fucking much. And we owe you so much more respect than you ever did in the global community. Let's keep it moving towards legalization, towards decriminalization, or we will all bust. And not in a good way. Happy Thursday to everybody. I hope you guys come out again tomorrow. And just remember, when life gives you no place else, you can always turn the fuck up. I love you.
Descheduler bug.
You are tuned in to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and enthogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nicole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.